Hello, everybody. It's Mike Yao with Savage Kingdoms Role Playing and Fire in the Head Productions, my little game company. So today's video, hopefully will be a somewhat quick video, although I say that it ends up being like 20, 30 minutes. But a very quick announcement, a very excited announcement. This is why I wanted to do this video today. So there was some debate. I think I posted a video like a week and a half ago about what I'm thinking about publishing next. I've shared that there's Red Sun. I've been working on Red Sun, a more pure sword and sorcery, kind of almost throwback to like 70s and 80s kind of style sword and sorcery, some of the movies back then and Heavy Metal magazine, all that kind of stuff. Worked on it. That game is about 85% done. Yeah, and then there was some debate about doing the next edition of Savage Kingdoms because several people have asked, and the 10th anniversary is coming up next year, 2024. Blah blah blah, etc. That's all been sort of said in past videos. So this video is to let everybody know that I have made a decision about what to publish next in next year, right? And that decision is Savage Kingdoms. Yep, I have decided to go forward with the Savage Kingdoms X is what I'm calling it. I know, maybe silly, but kind of cool. Hear me out. So the reason it's X is actually the Roman numeral 10, and it's the 10th anniversary of Savage Kingdoms, right? Kind of clever. Not really, actually. Not that clever, but anyway, that's what it's also kind of a placeholder right now, so it's kind of a win-win. It's like SKX, like whatever I call it, or maybe I leave it and it stands for 10th edition. So I refuse to call it 4th edition. There's too many negative connotations to that. I don't know, maybe I will, but probably not right now. Maybe I'll just call it the 2024 edition. I mentioned to somebody actually liked Dragon edition because it's the Year of the Dragon. Maybe, possibly. Seems like it kind of comes out of nowhere, but instead of just Dragon Edition, maybe if I call it Year of the Dragon Edition, I don't know. Whatever, we'll figure out. That's marketing. That's stuff later on. That's branding. That's stuff I'll worry about later on. But yes, I've decided to do that next year instead of Red Sun. Why am I doing this? But I could do Red Sun later on. I could publish it later on, or I just may keep it as a PDF and sell it on my publisher site on DriveThruRPG, or maybe not even sell it. Maybe probably just post it and let people pay what you want or whatever. Download it. I might put Mythic West up there. I don't know why I haven't thought about that until now. And so that's like a old West game that I published, but it's called Mythic West because it can be alternate history if you want, even though it's couched in actual history for the most part. And there are supernatural elements. Not that unusual, probably somewhat similar to Deadlands, just using my Exploding 20 mechanics from Savage Kingdoms, actually, which is what we're here to talk about. So yeah, kind of excited. I've been already working on it to some degree. And it might happen a little sooner than later next year. In my head, I was thinking about I'm going to publish it September of October of next year, which I don't know. I just kind of, because I like fall. It's also right after Dragon Con, which is this big convention here in Atlanta. Most of you probably know about it, heard of it, that I typically go through most years. And I generally run demos of Savage Kingdoms. And then this last year was Red Sun. Both games scored really high as far as feedback from players. And in fact, honestly, Red Sun, I think, scored maybe like 0.5 higher, but SK scored really high too. And I was like, wait a minute, there's still people out there that really like it. And several game designer, like people that really kind of knew what they were doing with game design, were bellied up to the table and they really liked the SK system with the rollover, how, especially for combat, if you score 6 over the person's defense, like that was a new concept to them or something. Actually, wait, the one guy did say he saw another game that tried something like that, but it didn't work really well. So that was a really good compliment. He really thought that was really elegant and which is the point of the system in the first place. But also the main point of the system was to use a single d20 for action resolution, so that you're not worrying about different dice, and that way the game flows a little quicker and more narrative, which was the real reason behind it. But the secondary reason was to almost challenge myself to come up with kind of an interesting D20 mechanic that's not disconnected from the other dice, if that makes any sense. So a unifying mechanic, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, but both games scored really high, and that kind of gave me pause a little bit. I'm like, because I was really just planning on, oh yeah, Red Sun, I'm just going to publish it, and then after that happened, it scored high, but Red Sun scored really high too, and then some like lately seems to be a very minor, because it's a very very small game, minor resurgence to Savage Kingdoms. More people are kind of coming forward and say, "Oh yeah, I love that game. I just I never said anything to you about it," or people that I thought gave up on it a couple of years ago are still playing it or want to get back into it or whatever. So it kind of gave me hope, and I was like, you know what? So my I won't say what birthday is coming up, but anyway, a milestone birthday is coming up for me. It's the year of a dragon, the year I was born in. So I was like, I just want to publish some cool game next year, whether it's Red Sun or Savage Kingdoms. And as I've said multiple times by now, I've decided to go with SKX, Savage Kingdoms 10th anniversary, whatever it's going to be called. The new edition, we're just kind of referring to it. I say we, some of my players, longtime buddies and playtesters that are pretty loyal to the game. They're already kind of aware that it's starting to happen. They don't know officially this is happening until they probably see this video. I haven't let anybody know until literally now. But they probably had their suspicions because I've been kind of working on it and sharing some stuff on some of the Facebook groups that support SK. So yeah, so I've already designed some of the races and cultures, some of the callings. I've got new spells. I've reformatted some of the spells, and you'll see. I'll talk more on that. I'll probably do these like design log videos. Probably not a whole lot of because people probably get kind of annoyed with those, but some people really do like to see behind the scenes a little bit and kind of see what the process is of creating RPG. And if they're not used to doing that or writing, world building, and all that kind of stuff, because when you're creating, especially a world that's not based on a published IP, like it's your own property, your own IP, you're not only creating the world, the fiction that you could basically write novels out of if you wanted to, but then you got to support that with all the mechanics, all the underneath, right? The fundamentals, right? The foundation, as it were. And so that's kind of where the almost the engineering and math part of game design comes in, where the other part is more like the right brain, creative kind of stuff. So putting those two together, I really enjoy. It's very challenging, um, and there's probably more to it than a lot of people think. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. So why am I doing in the next edition? Might be a question some people ask. They're like, "Oh, I'm so bloody happy for you, Mike." But why? Because it's only been 10 years, actually 9.5 years, since you first published the first edition of Savage Kingdoms, and also why you're using a weird British accent. Uh, so that was in 2014. Because it has been 10 years, and I feel like the 10th anniversary coming up, a milestone birthday for me, Year of the Dragon, blah, blah, blah. I think it was a good time. I was going to use that to be like brand new game, Red Sun, cool. And now I'm going to use it more like, yeah, Savage Kingdoms X or whatever it is. And I did this with SK3, but maybe not as much. I was really reeling it in, and I sleek-defied the system, and I was trying to promote it really well with what minuscule budget, um, minuscule social media for the most part, connections, and it just didn't quite. I mean, even some of the I had several people. I'm still slightly annoyed by this that were supposedly legitimate reviewers. Were like, yeah, send me a copy of your game, and I did. I sent them, and nothing. I never saw any review or anything. So if I have any kind of tiny bone to pick with anyone, it's that. Otherwise, totally cool. I get it. We're all busy and stuff, but yeah, several people were like, "Send it to me, and I shall review it, good sir." And wah, nothing. So they basically had a free PDF of the game. But yeah, whatever. My point being that hopefully in the next edition, SKX or whatever, I'll get more reviews out there. I'm going to try to make more contacts. We use social media a little bit better. Try to get better at that. Like I'm okay at it, but I'm not that great. Maybe hire some kid or something. I don't know to do that or whatever. Yeah. So another reason I'm doing it is like so I would not want to do a fourth edition, the next edition of SK, unless there was a reason to do it, right? So the reason isn't monetary because I make don't make a lot. I make very little money on this. My profession actually is as an actor, and I teach acting, and I'm a tour guide. So it's all like entertainment based stuff, right? And then very tertiary is game design. So then therefore the main reason actually becomes creative, right? Kind of artsy guy. I'm kind of driven by art for the most part. If I can make something of a living at it, great. I love to be supported for what I'm doing, like everyone else. Don't get me started with the artist thing, the writer thing, uh, an actor thing. But so the main goal really is passion, right? You really believe in the project, you really believe in the world, you believe in the game system, etc. And then even then, I wouldn't want to do it because unless there is something to that needs to be changed, like things that could be updated. And yes, there are. So over the years of playing SK3, which by the way will be 4 years next year, 2024. So that's not like it was literally 2 years ago. Like that's 4 years ago. So for a new core rulebook to come out 4 years later for a that's not that unusual. I think some people kind of jokingly, and I understand, are like, really, 4 editions in 10 years of your silly game, and I kind of get that. That is a little ridiculous, which is why I almost didn't do it in the first place and was going with Red Sun. One of the reasons, anyway. But I've spoken this before on in several videos. In independent game design, you have to put a core rulebook if you're trying to stay relevant with this game line. You believe in it, and you're not moving on to another project. You really have to release a core rulebook about every 3 or 4 years for a new edition. The big wigs can get away with it, right? D&D, Wizards of the Coast, Paizo, to some degree, they can ride an edition for 5 to 10 years, 12 years, because of the name notoriety. And so what they do instead, they put supplements, they put new products in the line, which is awesome. I envy that, because they can, right? The name just sustains it. But as a very small independent game, after your cool rule book, then this is all, you can research this all you want to, and you'll come to the same result. That is true. Once you do your core rule book, everything kind of drops off after that, and that's true to a degree with the big guys too, but not as drastically. So when you're already dealing with a tiny budget with a small game company, and you're dropping off in your game line very quickly, steadily decline with your new products, even if they're awesome, because people want that core rule book. It's got all the core stuff, hence why it's called that. So you have to kind of do that about every 3 or 4 years, and so it'll be 4 years next year. So honestly, weirdly, if I want to keep going with Savage Kingdoms, it's actually time to do that. So if this time it sticks a little bit more, like SK3, I thought would. Well, it has to a degree. Like a lot of like my friends and people that I know love Savage Kingdoms Third Edition. They all agree, which I do as well. It's the best edition of the three. Which makes sense. You learn from your past mistakes. You make things better. You get older, wiser, more experienced, etc. Um, but like I said earlier, to the greater universe, it didn't. I don't think it really stuck. Like I said, there were several people that I will review your game, and then crickets. So it didn't really quite get out there, with the exception of a couple of awesome people like Mildra and people like that who have done some stuff for me. Um, so I'm hoping SKX or whatever will stick in the ether a little bit more. Like it'll become a little bit more known, because I want people to play the game. It's not like I'm not looking to dethrone anyone. In fact, SKO has no chance. I mean, there are either other independent games that are massively larger. But I feel like I want people more to know about the setting and the system, because the few people that do play, almost without exception, just they love it. So, or at least to my face, I guess. But anyway, but I'm decent at reading people, and I think most of that is sincere. But there obviously been some criticisms, as there should be. One criticism is that we're going to change, and the new edition is the character creation process. Um, well, let me rephrase that. So people love the robust character creation system. I get lots of compliments on, oh my god, you can literally create whatever character. You could create a farmer who travels, um, and still be supported by various cool skills and talents and stuff, that he or she might be apt to do within that calling, and maybe branching off into learning to fight a little bit, or dabbling in folk magic or something like that. But using the favorite talent system and all the other little subsystems that support character creation, if you've played Savage Kingdoms, you know what I'm talking about. So in the new system, in the new SKX or whatever, we're doing similar but easier. So in other words, each race or culture, if you're playing a human, um, you make you get 10 talent points to choose from a menu of talents that represent favorite talents within your culture. So we're almost doing the same thing, but it's easier, so that it'll list the point cost right next to it. And then you move to the next step, which is you have what's the next step? You get to choose 3 skill specialties, just like in SK the previous editions, because people really like that. Skill specialties in the new edition will be much better. They're actually +2 now instead of just +1. Um, Even though the math will be reined in a little bit, so I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but maybe I'll get to that later, or I'll do it in another video. And then you get 5 points to spend towards cultural gear. So remember all those cool little cultural items that people really love that you get to start with 1, possibly 2 if you spend a luck point. So now you have 5 points to spend. So for example, if it's an option for your race or calling to start with an exceptional quality battle axe, it might cost you 3 points, and you would have 2 left to buy a 2-point item or 2 1-point items. So almost in all cases, you're going to start with more than 1 cultural item, which is really cool. And then your calling gives you 10 points for equipment, starting equipment as well, because that's where most of it would come from, is from your profession, which kind of makes sense. And then you get for when you get to the calling step of character creation. I know I'm kind of mixing things up a little bit. You would have 10 talent points for your calling, and then you get 10 skill points to choose for starting skills, etc., like that. So basically, you do your stuff from your race, because I like to do character creation in kind of like natural order, like you were born and you're a person, and this is your culture kind of shaped you like this. And then now this is your calling when you're kind of an adult, what you're called mostly to do, whether that's a sorcerer or a barbarian or a knight or a thief or an assassin or whatever. Yeah, and then at the very end of those 2 little processes, you get a little extra pool of talent or skill points to spend on whatever you want to. So very cool. So that way you get stuff favored towards your race or your culture, stuff favored to your calling, and then you get a pool of whatever, which kind of makes sense. This is what you learned in the world that had nothing really necessarily to do with your culture, your heritage, or your profession or occupation. So yeah, pretty happy with it so far. It sounds more complicated than it is. It's really not. Um, it's like a 9-step process, which sounds ridiculous, but it's very simple and it's all listed. Yeah, it's super simple. You're just spinning a little menu of points. You can probably, once you master the system, you can probably do it in like 5 minutes. Which I think will be faster than the current favored talents, because you have to flip back in the book a lot, even with the handy little appendix that we put at the end, the little master chart that cross-references favorite talents to your calling and your race. So yeah, just an easier way to handle stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be exciting. So going back to the math thing I was talking about, so I tightened the math pretty good at SK3, and what do I mean by that? Like, so a lot of people didn't say the second and first edition didn't. You could start with like plus 10 and something, right? Which it was fine. I was aware of it. We play tested and stuff. But in third edition, I reined it in a little bit more. Where maybe on average you start with a plus 7 or plus 8 and something if you're really good. And by something, generally I'm talking about skills. In the system, you could probably start with probably up to a plus 7 and something, but that would only be through a skill specialty, and then having a really good attribute that governs that thing. So the math gets a little more tightened, but it's also more meaningful because every skill specialty is plus 2 bonus instead of a plus 1. So my overall point my only point there is that my overall point is that the math will be tightened, but also in the process of doing that, it's more meaningful. In fact, there's a lot less plus 1 stuff to things. Most things are plus 2 or plus 5. There's still some plus 1s because it's just, was it quite enough to justify being a plus 2? But for the most part, the math has been, Savage Kingdoms is always, I don't know if you've noticed in the math, but it's always been what I call a plus 2, plus 5 system. And it's now even more so, which I think is really nice. In fact, thematically through the game system, you'll see a lot of 2s and 5s nodding to. Yeah, maybe I'll get to that in later stuff. So very happy about it. I like when systems are sleek and unified. That's kind of my thing. What I like to try to do the most. So touching on that really quick. So the greater thing is going to be this, like 90% of the game is going to be like third editions. It'll be actually fairly backward compatible. I know people like to use that term in RPG. So it will be, in fact, every edition of SK has been backward compatible pretty easily. This new one will probably be the most divergence, but only by slightly. You could easily backward compatible to SK3. But there are a few new elements, and again, I think that's necessary whenever you're creating a new edition. You just don't want to create the same old thing again with new art or whatever. People don't want to pay 50, 60 bucks for a core book. That's roughly the same thing. So you need to make some innovations, which I think I have. And I still have a few mutts that in fact, there's one thing I've already gotten rid of. I was so excited, and I had So a critical success is going to be 10 over the difficulty level, or actually I'm going to call it difficulty rating in the new edition. And I added, if you score 20 above, that's a heroic success. So I basically had heroic success, critical success, and then critical failure, like in the past. But the math didn't work out. I was going back and forth, and you have to it just didn't really work. So as far as right now, I got rid of the heroic success. I might come back to it, but I still think it works better with critical successes being scoring a 20 above what you need from an exploding 20. In other words, a natural 20. And a critical failure is still, I think it's pretty much how it was in SK3. If you if you end up with a 0 or less in something that you're trying, which you can, say you're -2 in skill you're trying and you roll a 1. It has to be from a natural 1, by the way. So if you have +5, if you in something and then you roll a 4 and you 6 and you get a -1, it's only if you score the natural 1 are you in danger of a critical failure. So another way to crit fail is to roll a natural 1 and the total result is 10 less than the difficulty level that you need. That is also a critical failure, but they're pretty rare. They don't really happen a whole lot, which is cool because they're called critical failures and critical successes. They're not just just kind of a better success or kind of a failure. So I want the words to actually mean something. So I've cleaned up the healing art skill as well. I've already worked on one of the skill entries. It's a lot more easier to manage and makes more sense. And some of the spell systems are a little more cleared up. They're more uniform now. The spell, not uniform, they're actually much more different and more interesting, but game mechanically. For example, the DR difficulty rating, which used to be DL, to successfully cast a spell, in other words, to make it manifest correctly the way you want it to, the way the spell's supposed to work, is 10 plus the skill level of the spell. So if it's a spell that requires air magic skill level 3 to learn, and you cast that spell, the difficulty rating is 13, 10 plus 3, right? And so the same with stamina cost. Stamina cost is the spell level to learn the spell, the minimum spell level. So in that case, it would cost 3 stamina points to cast a spell. I'm also going back to Reforged edition, the second edition of SK, where if the spell fails, you only spend half the stamina. And that's mostly because now with the new system, if you're casting, say, a 7th skill level spell, and God bless you, I mean, that takes a while to get there. If you could do that, that's awesome. But that's 7 stamina points just from that one spell. So if you fail to cast it, yeah, it sucks that it failed, but at least you're only paying half of that rounded down to 3. So in the spell description, it literally says stamina cost, and then parenthetically, it shows the cost for the failure of the spell. It also means this. So each spell lists a critical success, like what would happen, and a critical failure. So instead of choosing the critical success, you can choose to cast this spell at half the cost. So basically, you get 2 options for a critical success. So just sharing some insight here. So yeah, here we are at 23 minutes, of course, big shocker. So I just wanted to not. So when I start doing these videos, like I feel like I don't want to waste people's time on like an 8 to 10 minute thing. That's why I kind of go on. I like to tack content onto it because I don't do a lot of these. Maybe I should look at doing more videos with smaller durations. Several people have mentioned that. Maybe I should listen. What else can I add since we're already at 23 minutes? About SK3, yeah. So trying to market it a little bit better. We'll probably kickstart it. I was thinking around September, October, but now it might be more like May, which is around my birthday. I can kind of segue it into that maybe. Oh yeah, the other thing I wanted to announce was Heroic Adventures, right? So all the people that kickstarted Heroic Adventures and it's still not done, my bad. It is my bad, but there's reasons why. So I shared it in other videos. The printing costs have gone up. Now I can't hardly afford it without dipping pretty deep in my own coffers. I got busy with other with acting stuff and some other. This is like tourist season, lease season where I live. So my tour guiding job has been like super busy. So I got really busy with other stuff. However, another reason I decided to do Savage Kingdoms 10 or 4th edition is that way I'm going to make Heroic Adventures part of the 4E or the SK10 release. So that way, and it's already 70% written. So, but it's pretty easy for me to go back once I get the SK, the new game system mechanics settled out, and I mostly have. I think it'll be completely solid in like a month or so. then I can go back and change all the little minor changes that will be in Heroic Adventures. So, long story short, SK Heroic Adventures will now be part of the new edition, and that way it's not aged out. Like, I'm finally done with this beautiful book and new edition. So hopefully that will, now granted that will probably cause it to come out even later than it would, but honestly, even if I were to keep it third edition, the earliest it would probably be out would be January, February. If it's released more like between May and September, it's actually not that much further. So it's another like half a year to wait on it. I do apologize, but I think in the long run it's going to be a great, awesome thing because it's going to contain all the new stuff, right? All the new game mechanics and everything will be. So it'll be nice to have a core rule book, and then almost immediately right after is Heroic Adventures. That's these adventures and other like there'll be even new talents and monsters in there that will keep the edition new. So I think it's a good thing. It's a win-win. So I'm pretty happy with that. So really cool. I'd still apologize for dragging butt on that thing, but now it's going to happen, and it kind of forces it to happen more. So that's awesome. Keeps me straight, right? I think that's it for now. So, all the main SK stuff. I said that's it for now. Then I go into more stuff. But yeah, 90% of the game system is the same. I had a friend earlier today he thought I was getting rid of the skill system and kind of going with the Red Sun thing, where talent supported skills, which is fine. It's pretty elegant game design, but I think people kind of like those 30 traditional skills that we had in Savage Kingdoms and the way they kind of work with the rest of the season, and talents then therefore represent more like interesting combat maneuvers or little knacks and things that you learn that's not necessarily one of the 30 skills, which was the original intent of the design. We still have weaknesses. I know in Red Sun I called them complications, but I think I'm just going to stick with the old SK terminology with weaknesses. They still give you skill bonuses to add towards. They add to that bonus talent pool at the end. Skill at the end, by the way. Remember, I was talking about how you go through the character creation process. So if you have 5 points of weaknesses, which is the maximum, that would give you 5 extra talent or skill points to spend at the end of character creation on whatever you wanted to. So that's still there. The only thing a little different with weaknesses I think I'm liking for the most part is now it lists some, which makes sense because they used to be favored weaknesses for your race or your culture. But callings have them now too. And the reason I was originally doing them with Red Sun only with certain callings like Sorcerer. I felt like Sorcerer needed to have the corruption weak, especially in traditional sword and sorcery, corruption or madness or oathbreaker, something like that, some kind of dark thing. And then I realized as I felt like almost every calling could be justified with having like a list of weaknesses to choose from. So you have to choose at least one from your race/culture. You have to choose at least one from your calling, and then the rest of it is open. You can spend whatever extra point or two left for another weakness, or just not have them at all, and just have the 2 weaknesses. So yes, it does make people have probably at least 2 weaknesses, whereas in the past you could technically have 0 weaknesses, but hardly anybody did that because they do give you bonus points and they are fun to role play. So with a new system, that almost forces you to have a weakness or two, but I think it's fine because again, 98% of people like them, and they do game mechanically give you bonus points. So I think it's fine. That's not solidified, but I'm 90% chance that I'm probably going with that. Yeah, skills. What else? Oh yeah, so skills are being tiered. I think I said this in past videos. There's a tier system now with skills. So there's a tier 1 skills, or tier 2 skills, tier 3. Tier 3 is magical arts, all the 7 magical arts disciplines. Tier 2 are the is brawling, the 2 weaponry skills, melee and ranged, perception, stealth, stuff that gets used fairly often. Tier 1 skills are like sailing, disguise. Did I do crafting? I might have did crafting. Or I might have put it at 2 now. Anyway, sleight of hand I think is just 1. Um, that's one, and that one's hard to decide to go between 1 or 2. So what does that mean? It means that you get that's how many skill points you spend to gain a skill level in a skill. So, for example, if you want to gain a skill level in magical arts water, assuming you have the talent to express that that you are a water mage, it will cost 3 skill points for just a single skill level. But you gain 10 skill points every advancement. So instead of just the 5, you get 10 to take care of that. So you could spend all 10 points on tier 1 skills if you wanted to, as long as you don't go over the maximum level for your advancement. You could spend some on tier 2 skill or 2. whatever, however you want to do it. So yeah, I think it's more fun and makes a little more sense because some of the skills they don't get used as much so they're like tier 1 skills now. And that's fine if you want to build a character and that's really focused on some of those tier 1 skills. That's awesome. You'll have some points left over for other stuff. So again, if you want to build the farmer, you can in the system. So oh yeah, speaking of what, so magical arts. While I'm on the subject, so it used to be magical arts. Every odd number skill level, any magical arts gives you another spell that you learn. So now it's every level. So that's kind of cool. So every skill level in a magical arts, you gain knowledge of another spell of that discipline. So very cool. The language skill is the same way. I think I'm still tweaking it. So it used to be every odd number level in the language skill you gain a new language. Now I say I think because it's a lot of languages. Every skill level in language you learn a new language, possibly because that's a lot. But you only start with 2, right? So you start with your native language and your cultural language, or like a secondary language that you learned growing up. It's usually from border kingdoms or races that you had contact with, right? That's the point. And so if you put say a level or 2 in language, you learn another skill level. I think the problem is I have language as a tier 1 skill. So literally 1 skill point is a skill level in a language. That might be a bit much, so I might put it down to skill level 2. But anyway, these are many little problems that I'm working out. I have several months to figure it out, and it's a lot of fun. That's kind of the joy of world building and game design. All right, so we're at 31 and a half minutes, so I think I'm going to call it here. Thanks for listening if you made it this far. If you only made it through the first few minutes, that's fine, because that was the main announcement that I am going forward with Savage Kingdoms X. Thank you guys for playing the game, enjoying these videos, hopefully, and I'll talk to you again soon.